Any advice, and this is a very general question, John, don't hate me for it, but any advice for the dudes that are on that grind where you have a master's degree and you're struggling to still get an internship?
You got to keep hunting. You got to keep hunting. I mean, what I've done is I've got a very strong network of coaches that I think we just have great relationships. I mean, Dave Feely's at Miami. We went to school together, played against each other growing up from one town away. Aaron Feld's been a really good friend out at Oregon. Lou Carella down at Georgia Tech. And so anyway, you take all these guys, and when you have someone really good that's like looking for that internship, I'll reach out to these guys for someone. If I know that we're not taking anybody else, I would tell the intern or whoever that person is to be ready and be willing. So you may live in the area where you want to go to Maryland and get an internship. If that opportunity is not there, well, be willing to go across the country to Oregon if he's got something for you, right? Because you're going to be connected to this network no matter what. You're going to go through it. You're going to do a great job. And guess what Aaron Feld's going to do? When you're ready to look for a job, he's going to be back in that network of coaches going, hey, listen, I got a guy who's ready. If anybody loses somebody or you have transition this year, I got a guy that, I'd love for you to think about. So I think right now it's just important to be willing and be ready. And then what are you doing to stay sharp? So whether that's, registering for a continuing ed course like Altus, something that can keep you disciplined and regimented and keep you on point. Stay sharp while you're waiting and while you're staying ready.
So, Ryan, you asked earlier to John to take this back to the 10-year earlier or the 34-year-old John. So how about the 24-year-old Ryan Davis who's committing to becoming a coach? And you've been through this track the last 10, 11 years. What advice would you give to that young Ryan Davis?
Two things, man. My biggest regret in my career, I had an incredible experience at the University of West Florida. I probably didn't enjoy it as much as I could. I had an unbelievable experience working at the University of Alabama. I had one of the best assistant jobs in the country, but I knew I wanted to be a head guy. So every single thing that I did with the perspective of it's got to prepare me to be a head guy. When we traveled to games, I go out the towns and go to with the rest of the, staff or equipment guys or strength guy. I didn't. The only thing I know about the towns that we played in is the stadium and the hotel that we stayed at. That's it. I'm going to go with what you said. I would say slow down. Enjoy the moment. You're at one of the best places you could be in the pinnacle of the time of that place, right? You're in the college football capital. It's what I call Tuscaloosa. Enjoy it. Learn, but enjoy it. And the second thing I would say, my first head job that I got, I was 26 years old. And I thought I had all the answers because I went from the pinnacle of college football at Alabama to little old Sanford. And you weren't going to tell me that I was wrong or I didn't know what I was doing. Or I still get those guys to joke with me because they're like, man, coach, we freaking ran. Now I involve my staff a whole lot more when it comes to the programming, the planning, and the how we're going to execute the objectives for what we have. I'm much more calculated in. I use that word objective all the time because every training block we get into, I'm like, we go back to that. Well, what are we trying to get done? What do we have to get done? And let's make sure when we put this down, all of it has to be measurable. What does the head coach expect? What does he want us to get done? It's all got to be measurable. So I was hard-headed. I was very, very hard-headed as a strength coach and probably really lucky. So I would tell myself to talk less and listen more. I don't know where I'd be today if I had done those things, but I know that at 26, you could not tell me. I just wouldn't listen. And there are things that I did that I would not do today. I would absolutely not do today.
Isn't that really everybody though? I mean, I'm sure like if you looked back and you were like, man, at 26 I knew it all and I still know it all. Have you really grown? You know, like I just think age gives you that perspective. I mean, you look back and you're like, oh, what was I thinking at the time? I thought I was on top of the world, but no, that's. I mean, has your philosophy changed? I mean, like in terms of like how you prepare the athletes. Like I was thinking, like as a strength coach, especially like a place versus Alabama versus where you're at Maryland, kind of a different type of offense, different type of athlete that they tend to recruit. So do you feel that like your strength conditioning approach kind of changes a little bit based on like, hey, like if the coach is a big like grounded pound type of dude, we need to have some bigger offensive linemen, we need a bigger back to be able to smash it in, opposed from more like kind of the spread run and gun kind of deal where now all of a sudden we got a whole bunch of fast guys, kind of like the cat at Oregon that was running those hurry up, and all those linemen were about 275 pounds because they couldn't keep big dudes in there.
Yeah, and it has. I think I've developed and progressed to where, again, what does the head coach expect? What's the objectives? What are we trying to get done? All that comes into account. Whereas probably when I was 26, I really didn't care what we did on defense or offense. I came from a place where, I joke with Locks about this. When I was at Alabama, we snapped the football 60 times a game. 60. We played defense. When he was at Alabama, they were snapping the ball almost 90 times a game, and they were putting the football all over the field. We didn't do that. And so I would often look back and say, how could I train a team the same way and prepare them the same way to go do something totally different? So I do think I've definitely grown and evolved because, again, at 26, I wasn't looking at what we were doing offensively or defensively. I didn't care. I didn't care what we did on special teams. I was like, this is how we're going to get a football team ready. I know how to get a football team ready, and you can't tell me any different.
How's Maryland set up? I mean, are you guys more kind of a speed team? I mean, it sounds like you guys like to run. Is that kind of the division you guys are in?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to try to snap the ball on offense, and they're going to get the ball all around the field. They're going to snap it a whole lot more. So the offense is going to be similar to what you've seen at Alabama the last few years, and on defense, they've got to be able to run. I talk with my coordinators quite a bit, and John Hoke will tell you, like, what's his biggest thing for guys? Guys are going to be able to run. That's what I need. Guys have to be able to run and move. When you look at our offensive coordinator, they're going to tell you, we're going to tempo, we're going to snap the ball. A lot of times we're going to have a lot of snaps on the field. We're going to spread people out. There are times that we're going to bring people in. So I could go through, like I do with my OC, what every position is going to demand. So we talk about it, and we talk about how we want to train those guys, how we want to develop those guys. And I need to make sure that what I'm doing ultimately is preparing them for the demands that the coaches are going to place on them and what they expect of them. But I'll tell you again, at 26, you couldn't have had this conversation with me. Probably not until I was about 30 years old, where I started to realize, and again, that's because now I'd gone from Samford to then go to Colorado State, where we were different. So I went from Alabama, Samford to Colorado State. That's the amount of time it took me to realize that, oh man, like, we're different. At Colorado State, we put the quarterback under center. And we wanted to play with two tight ends, and we wanted to freaking run downhill at people. But you know what else he would do? Bobo would take him and spread him out and say, now I want to play fast. And I'm like, well, we didn't do that when I was at Alabama. We didn't play very fast when I was there. We were bigger and stronger than people, and we moved people around. And no matter what we tried to do throwing the football, we could always give the ball to a back. Maybe you've heard of some of them, like Trent Richardson or Mark Ingram or Eddie Lacy or TJ Yeldon. You always had those guys back there. So no matter what, we could always hand the ball off. So as a strength coach, that was probably the first time that I sat back and was like, man, you might have to do some things different to prepare the team to play differently.
Was it a moment or conversation, or just a light bulb went off when interacting with the CSU head coach?
I think the moment was when I went to CSU, when I first took the job. This was the first moment. You're almost a mile high up there at elevation. So I know when I was at Samford, me personally, man, I was in really good shape. I was training hard. I go to Colorado State. I'm doing the same stuff that I was doing 2 weeks before in the weight room at Sanford, and I'm gassed. And so I'm like, man, well, when you're in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, you're not worried about training athletes at elevation. So I had to go and start researching this whole thing about elevation. That was probably the first moment that I realized some things needed to change. And then after that first season, when I saw how we were going to be as a team, offensively and defensively, I'm like, oh man, you know what? Man, we could go fast at the drop of a hat. Or we can come in, play with 2 tight ends and run the football, you know? And I'm like, we need to be ready for this. So it started to change. That process started to change over that first year. And that's where I'm like, we need to be able to adapt to how these coaches want them to play.